Hi, I'm Rachel and welcome back to Auxhart Gardening. Today I'm going to talk about fertilizing for gardening beginners. So when you're new to gardening, you might walk into the garden center and see all of these different fertilizers lined up along the wall and think, oh my gosh, like how am I ever going to choose which one is the right fertilizer to use? And I'm going to make a bold statement and say none of them. Now, hear me out. So, in my opinion, synthetic fertilizers, like a lot of the ones that you commonly see in the garden center, are not doing you any favors in the long term. They're kind of like a short-term band-aid. So a fertilizer is really making up for what wasn't in the soil to start with. And so my biggest recommendation to you is to, from the get-go, think about your soil long term. Think about building it up from literally the ground up so that you don't have to go to those stores and get all of these sort of band-aid synthetic fixers for your soil. Now, if you're a new gardener, you're probably starting either by filling your very first raised bed, or you are taking over a raised bed that you found. Maybe it was already on your property and you're clearing it out for the first time use in a long time. Probably the soil, it either isn't there because you're starting a new bed, or maybe it isn't in very good condition because nobody's been caring for it. And so the best thing that you can just start with is compost. Now, you can go buy compost from the store. That's okay. I would recommend being a little careful about your sourcing of compost. If you're getting it from like a big box store in the bags, then that's probably fine. If you're sourcing maybe a larger quantity from somewhere local, then you probably should be a little more careful because you're not quite sure what it is that they've put into their compost. So just like do your research, ask some questions, and make sure that they're giving you a good quality compost before you go filling all of your beds with that. So start with compost. That is the very best thing that you can do for your soil because it's got an array of nutrients and it's already living soil. The biggest thing you want in your soil is for it to be alive, for it to be full of all of the microbes that are going to help balance the soil nutrients. In particular, I'm talking about the beneficial bacteria and fungi that help make some micronutrients more bioavailable to your plants. So what bioavailability means is just whether or not your plant can actually use the nutrients that are there. This is the biggest problem with things like minerals. A lot of times the chemical structure of it is locked up in a form that your plant just can't reach. And so beneficial bacteria and fungi are in the soil breaking down those minerals so that your plants can actually use them. And a lot of times you'll find that the synthetic fertilizers that you might get from the store are not good for these beneficial bacteria and fungi in your soil. So like I said, long term, something like that really isn't a sustainable option. Another way that you can start building your soil right away as a new gardener is by making sure that you mulch it. So mulch is just a topping on the soil. It's either like wood chips or leaves, or sometimes people use hay and straw for this. But basically you're putting a biological something cover on your soil so that you're protecting it from the sun and the weather so that all of that microbial life isn't so disturbed. You're also keeping the moisture in the soil so that it doesn't dry out so fast, especially in the heat of summer. And then finally, as that mulch breaks down, you're adding nutrients to your soil and building another layer of new nutrition for the coming year. So if you are brand new, starting from scratch, you probably will have to add something to your soil, and especially if you're going to be container gardening, you're probably going to want to add a little bit of something unless you're using already a pre-fertilized potting mix. And so really the only recommendation I have for you is this fertilizer. So this is something that I actually got from another YouTuber. You might have heard of him. His name is MI Gardener. And I'm not being paid to promote this or anything. I've really loved it because it's got this balance in it. It's got all of the macronutrients, it's got a lot of micronutrients, and it also helps seed that beneficial bacteria and fungi into your soil and help maintain that population over time. And for a new gardener, this is a super easy option to reach for because it is going to help build your soil health over the long term, and it's not going to be just a band-aid fix like I talked about earlier. It's going to be really beneficial for you over the long term, and you can even keep using this every single year. So that is really just a basic overview of what you should be thinking about as a new gardener when it comes to fertilization, or as I like to call it, soil building for the long-term health of your garden. Thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, happy gardening.